Hi, I'm Seamless, and because I'm an idiot and didn't record this at the beginning of the actual thing I recorded, this is me at the end of having done it, and I'm here to tell you that this video is brought to you by Zounds. They are an online music retailer that sells pretty much all the stuff you generally need to be a producer, a musician, or even a live professional or a studio professional. All kinds of stuff are available, up to and including this MatrixBrute from Arturia, which is a part of a deal they gave me for them to give me gear and for me to show it to you. That's honestly the extent of the deal. I talk about it a little bit later in the middle of the video, but like I said, I forgot to say it in the beginning of the video. So that's why you're seeing this. Anyway, now time for the real video. Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is an Arturia MatrixBrute. Isn't that just delightfully synthy? So that was just me a little bit dicking around there because this thing is a crazy powerful analog mono synth. The three oscillators presented might make you think it's sort of designed to be other things, and it can sort of do the thing you might expect, which is to just assign an oscillator per note and work with that. That's apparently called Paraphonic Mode. And that's all well and cool and all, but the thing that makes this particular nonsense amazing is that everything all I just set up here and did with this matrix, like key track the thing and whatever. And then this is fun. This is an Arpeggiator sequencer where you play your four notes and then you have plus 1 octave, minus 1 octave in the original four notes. It's really cool. These things about this can all be saved because every one of these knobs and covers and faders and things are digital encoders that can be targeted by the matrix to be modulated and then saved in the thing as its thing. And that's pretty much the primary, like, practical limitation of hardware is that you can't save presets most of the time. Unless it's like a digital piece of hardware that generally is doing things that you almost can certainly do better just digitally if you're going to do that, like in VSTs and stuff. But to get the actual benefit of a complicatedly routed piece of thing like this, you either need something modular, which lets you patch in and out and whatever to anything to actually take advantage of all the different ways that the different things can do different things. Or it's a thing that's set up one way, more or less designed to be that way, and not a whole lot else can happen. This is pretty much the replacement for the modular concept, because this is all of the modulators that the thing has, and boy, does this thing have plenty. Not just this, like this is, you know, pitch wheel, mod wheel, cool keyboard shenanigans. But look at these are macro knobs, straight up hardware macro knobs. They all have their own MIDI CC configurations. So when you're triggering this thing with an external sequencer, you can use it to move these knobs and modulate everything. Because it's true that these destinations are the built-in ones. I don't know how well. Actually, you know what? I would just move the camera there. I'm using a GoPro because that's the only camera I have left that actually works. Is recording. Yay. Did that seem like Seamless just did some editing? Nope. I just paused the recording in real time and moved the camera so that you didn't have to get motion sickness with the camera flopping around because it's on a mic stand. That's what I'm using. I'm using a mic stand connected to a bunch of GoPro bones and then a GoPro. But anyway, this is the matrix all zoomed up in. And when you can read up on the things here, you can see sort of a sensible pattern because all of these dudes are all knobs that are over there. Actually, can I just like, whee, well, almost. Keep going, you. Yeah, there you go. Over there, you can also see glimpses of the hardware I'll be looking at in the future. The KeyStep Pro and the Drum Brute, also from Arturia, as well as a Micro Freak, which is not in frame. But, so all of these knobs, a lot of the main ones in the oscillators are properties that are targetable in the matrix. And that's so like mostly what this is for. Now, I'm pointing this out because the Matrix has something kind of special about it. Not just that it can be saved and not all because it has pages and it's sequencing. Like, here's the pages, right? Here's the preset page where you pick what preset you're using. These are all preset types. I don't know if you can pick banks or whatever. That might be what that is. But I haven't gotten that far into it because I've just been using the last row, which has like what was user presets, and I'm messing with that. Over here is the sequencer side. This is what it looks like when it's on Arpeggiator mode. This is what it looks like when it's in actual sequencer mode. It's not as doing much of this jitteriness for me in real life because I'm not a camera. But what these lanes are representing, this is just like, 4 steps of beat, 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 and then the rest of the measures. It can be this long if you want it to be, or it can be shorter. But what these other 3 lanes are, this one indicates that what your step has an accent applied to it, so just high velocity essentially. And the next one up is a slide. It's essentially a slide note indicator. It indicates that it's going to slide to that note, and like you can just have that on or off, internally triggered, which is super sweet. And then this up here is, I'm pretty sure this is where it indicates there's controller data, because not only can you just do the regular sequencer thing where you hold down the thing and you move the knob, and then that's how it moves the value in that step, and each step just moves it around there. It also, you can hit the record button on all of this and move the knob, and it'll record the mob movements. Yes, the knob movements. It's pretty sweet. And then over here is the actual modulator page. So here's the special things about the modulator page. The first one is that these are the limited options that we get that are mostly just the oscillator ones. Excuse me, wow. But what if I wanted to add something that was like else? Because there is also an entire effects section just coming up here. It's basically a pretty sweetly integrated analog delay that is controlled in pitch and time and presence in such a way in various configurations to get you this sort of expected array of time-based effects. So delay, mono stereo, flanger, chorus, and reverb, which is a lot of intensely intermodulated way to fuzz it up in such a way that it sounds like reverb. This thing is pretty much the only reason why there's a stereo output on this thing. But point is that there's the parameters up here, and if I wanted to say move the delay time knob, all I gotta do is hold down these extra 4 lanes, which are unlisted essentially, move the thing, and then this freaking e-ink display changes what the preset value is. I love that that's what that is, by the way. This is the stuff that e-readers use, like Kindles and junk. And what's cool about it is that it doesn't use power unless it's moving, like unless it's changing the page. It's just there. So like when I turn this thing off, that's still there, which kind of freaked me out when I opened this thing up out of the box, because I thought they had like some really deeply inserted, like I kept the plastic on here because by the hell the way, this video is brought to you by Zounds. I might actually edit this video to state this in the beginning because I really should, because I only have this because the website retailer Zounds decided to include me in their influencer outreach program, which is exactly what it sounds like. They're just giving me gear to do videos with. And there's honestly not a lot of anything associated with the deal other than like I gave them a large list. And it's mostly just all their synths, a couple of keyboards, some neat cables, some pickups. But for the most part, the deal is they give me fun stuff, I do fun stuff, I give it back, and that's the end of it. They're honestly the coolest people I've ever done business with. Okay. Yeah. And then, so then that's why I'm not like removing the plastic yet, because this isn't mine. I don't want to deprive whoever this actually gets to be owned by the pleasure of taking that crap off. But I thought I would have to get rid of like a fake one of these, because I thought that's what it was. But nope, it's an e-reader thing. And once you move a knob and associate it, now it's a target. Now it's a brand new lane that can get output and into that particular parameter. Now, there's one more special things about these earlier 12 lanes though, because as they are just output into whatever parameter there's also in the back, actually we can maybe see it. Yay, camera that can move. That's a bunch of CV inputs and outputs associated to each lane. Now this is where this gets a little weird, because you might, like I did, I started assuming some things about what was possible with this as a result of that being true. Like, because especially when you saw the parameters that, camera no. Oh, it's back, yay. I paused it the last time I did this, but now I'm talking, so I don't want to pause. You know what, I'm just gonna pause, because it won't be paused to you. I have to get this camera impossibly far away to get a whole shot of this thing. It is very large. You see how big my hands are? Like, come on. Anyway, so these lanes, these 12 lanes, they are what they are, and they are associated with these particular knobs. So this one, for example, VCO pitch and VCO 1 ultra. VCO 1 pitch is just what it sounds like. It's the pitch of the first oscillator. But there's a bunch of these intermodular buttons, or knobs, that are FM and for filters and for oscillators. So if this were connected the way it seems like it's supposed to be, this would output an FM'd signal if I FM'd oscillator 1, because that's what happens in analog universe. But that's not what happens in separated controller universe, because this whole thing's bag is that it's an analog stuff that's being controlled by digital things that are having their states saved and stuff. What that ultimately means about these CV outputs is that while they're outputting analog signals and whatnot, they aren't doing anything that has anything to do with these oscillators. It has only to do with these lanes. These lanes are essentially the calculation that gets pulled out, and they're just offsets that get applied to what's happening here. And this is just the very beginning of strange choices that at first seem nonsensical, because holy crap, wouldn't that be neat if all the oscillators parameters were broken out into CV inputs that we could just attach to stuff. But the sort of result is that, on the other hand, yeah, this makes the really tightly intermodulated nature of the rest of the stuff a lot easier to handle when these are mostly just offsets that can just be saved for knobs that are usually really complicated. And we'll get into that when we start making some sounds, because in a minute the rest of this video is going to be me making some sounds. Anyway, let's go over kind of what all the knobs do. That should be fun. All right, so in beginning land, the way that this is set up here, we have this master filter thing, and what this is doing is just a controlled offset of both of these filters. It says VCS1 Steiner and VCF2 ladder. So you have a Steiner filter and a ladder filter. I only kind of know what a ladder filter is, and I had not heard of a Steiner filter until I had this thing. I guess they're both different types. Like, one thing I have noticed about this deal is that pretty much anything you could say that's applied to the term analog monosynth exists in here, in one way or another. And a lot of very accessible, quickly doable things. Like, I did this bit with the triangle wave and its wave shaper. Like, the things they have associated with their particular choices in oscillators are very efficient for getting really everything you would think to need to get if you're having this piece of hardware, if you're doing this thing. Like, well, let's talk about what we're doing with this thing, right? You know something? Let's reset the preset, which I think I do by doing this and then that. Is that what happened? Yes. Nice. This panel button is the one that, like, does the alternate modes and things. For example, if I hit panel and keyboard track, it will auto-tune the oscillators. I'm gonna do it. What I'm doing right now is I'm zeroing all the knobs, because we just changed that preset and I'd moved none of the knobs and it completely reset. All of these knobs are digital states that are saved. They're all digital encoders, and if I'm being completely honest, I would prefer all the knobs to be ones like these. Maybe not exactly specifically this particular knob, because holy crap, this knob and this knob are like the most high quality knobs I've ever touched on anything. It's insane. I can't believe how good this feels. Like, I feel like I should be controlling NASA data with the granularity I can sense. But the rest of these guys are clearly of a style, and the zeroing helps. There's snaps like in the main bit, and you can see how that lights up though, but it also lights up when it gets the other bits, and these don't snap. They don't have to snap though, because this is a semitone converter, so like being on means you're on. Like, I can wiggle a lot within that range there, but I'm going to be on an octave. I really think that the digital like encoders would have made it a little bit easier, because then when I switch presets, I wouldn't have the zero knobs. I don't have to, but it's for me to like keep track of what's happening. It helps. Especially when I want to do something like take advantage of this LFO. Because one of the neat things it just lets you do is that if I just hit this mod wheel button, which changes what the mod wheel does. Because normally it's a thing in a matrix. It's just, here's the mod wheel. Where's that? There it is. Like, that's just that. But you can hit it, and now the mod wheel's controlled to cut off of the filters directly. which of course you could just set up to be behavior in the matrix, which you probably want to do that way. But this other one is essentially on vibrato, with LFO1 linked to pitch. A lot of fun that. Like, the efficiency potential in this is insane. Like, this is not all that new a piece of hardware. I've seen it a long time ago and pretty much wanted to get my hands on it ever since. But even then, this would have been a startlingly modern piece of equipment. Not just for the inclusion of this whole sequencer modular setup that lets you save stuff, but because the intermodular choices and the way it's all set up and how compact this is really is a sight to behold, because all the choices are made with modern intention. They're knowing that, like, if you're getting this, you either are going DAW less or you're going to use it in a DAW, and you really then need to get that level of functionality out of it. And the primary thing that was standing in the way of analog stuff doing that is mostly just the availability of presets. But after that, then it gets to be, because the analog stuff lived in that universe, they started to make choices. Things like not making stuff this complicated. And then also, like, not really knowing what they needed to have. Like, I mentioned that this triangle thing is neat. Let me talk about what it does. This is the filter routing buttons that you can do for every individual one of these oscillators, including a noise oscillator and an external input. I'm going to mess around with that at some point. That's going to be a lot of fun. So, this triangle. So, each oscillator has a saw, a square, and a triangle. And the triangle has this associated with it. A straight up wave shaping, wave folding thing happening. And what's just so great about that is it's not immediately obvious, but that amount of, like, spectral alteration it opens up a whole universe of actual sound design within an environment like this. I'll show you what I mean. So first off, if you do fun stuff as just as much as just key tracking the value, I'm going to make it lower when it goes higher. It kind of sounds almost like instrumental at that point. Doesn't that kind of sound like a freaking oboe, kind of? And that was just from key tracking distortion value. Now, setting this up as a thing that you would want to do on purpose with what traditional analog synths give you out of their oscillators would probably be a lot. It would probably be the weird, clever thing you could do with the thing. But this is just the weird, clever thing they thought to let you do with just this third of an oscillator. Fourth, I guess. They have subs, but I haven't really used a lot of these yet because I haven't tried that hard. But the point is like, that's the decisions they made. And it just blows my mind because it's so handy. So, like, in the particular, this one, it can be kind of a lot when you move it. And if I wanted that to kind of still have motion applied to it, like, you know, Reese value style, I could apply a LFO. Oh, here's a fun thing. The third oscillator is a modulation oscillator. The same way it kind of works in, like, in massive, or if you're set up this way to be in faceplant. This thing actually kind of reminds me a lot of faceplant in a lot of ways. I don't know if that faceplant existed when this thing was new, though. Maybe, I mean, just because audio rate stuff, not audio rate stuff, like the separation, and the fact the way you can route things. Obviously, I can't just keep adding more. That would be great. But unlike faceplant, this goes, like, the whole reason any analog stuff is great is because when you have high frequency sort of adjusted content like this, and then you do harsh stuff to it, like FM it, like, let's take number 3 and go into Vco 1. Like, that's kind of a lot. But there's also a Vco Sync button. This is Vco Sync from 2 to 1. So now when 2's oscillation period resets, that's also when Vco 1's oscillation period will be set. But regardless of whatever pitch oscillator 1 actually is. That is insane. Like, the creation of the material in the first place was already pretty crazily, like, efficient. And then the solution to the problem of the motion it's inherent to being readily available like that is also insane. On top of having now a behind the scenes modulation source that I can link here. In fact, I will. Let's see, FO. I'm going to apply the keyboard tracking to this one too, but now I'm going to go high when it goes high. So also here's something else about this thing being kind of a strangely separated universe in terms of its generation versus its output and control. The pitch wheel and that vibrato stuff that's happening. I'm not sure. This actually might, if I put this LFO one out into something, that might actually vibrato it too. But if I manually do it, this will not follow the pitch. And it's because it's not related. Like that's another thing that told me that this was pretty well not related. This is an entirely separate controller architecture into this than this is, and it doesn't talk to each other, and to the sense that this doesn't know. Like if this wheel had, you know something? It has aftertouch. I noticed aftertouch in here. I think actually that's pretty much what this wheel does. Let's actually test. Actually, I guess we can't do that right now because of the picture change. There's ways we can test that later. Because this is in the matrix. Like this one is connected and it says that these control the matrix, but like this doesn't seem to be doing that. And I have done this already where I have connected something to the pitch output from here. Like I was doing a separate sub for a bass, which it helps a lot. But when I pitch wheeled, it did not move. So that's interesting. Unless I guess I just have to set it with the aftertouch. That would actually be a pretty swell thing to do. But like, there is real aftertouch too, so like if I put this on the filter, oops, I put that on number 2 by accident. This is the filter. Aftertouch is a great thing. The reason why I'm thinking it's associated with the pitch wheel, maybe in some way or not, is because that's kind of what happens inside MIDI inside DAWs sometimes. Is the aftertouch setting is what the pitch wheel is, and you can either get one or the other. We need if I assign that to pitch too, because here's something else that's fun about the sync mode. Given the fact that this will restart when I tell it to, if I make it a higher or lower pitch, it doesn't interfere with the solidness of it. In normal terms, you would expect the sort of result you get out of going high, because that's something that people hear a lot. But in pretty much only a real analog environment have I done oscillator sync and found a value in going lower than the thing I'm synced then. In reality, it's more or less I'm just rectifying the signal, but the reason why analog is superior in this configuration for these processes is 100% because of aliasing. In a regular digital environment, if I were to set up a thing that did this hard, which would not be difficult to do, you could tell a thing to do this. You could just reactor up some stuff and it'll do it. You might have to like double up on some stuff because a lot of the software doesn't want you to go that hard. And the reason why is because it wildly generates frequencies higher than Nyquist, which is half the sample rate. When that happens, it doesn't go away. It warps back down below Nyquist, back into your audible range, and it will not be harmonic. And that's something that we can tell, because when we play something rigid and harsh and high frequency and with perfect harmonic content, which is not to say that this is perfectly in tune, or even that the harmonics are perfectly in tune, just that the harmonics are all relevant to the content that generated it. Because these are all being generated by interaction with all the various oscillators, so they're not going to be in tune, which means that the output is not going to be a perfect harmonic multiplier, but it will be a multiple. it will be a multiple of the input content, which is not always true for digital stuff. And that's something we can feel. Another part of it is that the feeling you get when you play a chord that's too low. Okay. When you like really get down there, and this actually I'll just do this, like this chord, kind of bad, but way up here, kind of okay. Still pretty bad, but it's getting better. And if I played higher along with Everything Else, we would hear it that it would kind of smooth out and be okay. And that's because the rate of it being bad, which was that phase cancellation, the rhythmic nature of it, was too fast for us to hear it as a thing that we could feel individual motion for. But in the low frequencies, we can hear that a lot. And what makes a sawtooth wave, all that sharpness all aligned, is that all the harmonics are aligned in such a way that they all reinforce each other. And that like the rate of phase, because the harmonics are usually expressed in multiples of note values. It's all octaves and fifths and thirds and halves and that kind of thing. And when they are all chorded up like that, they introduce sort of what we understand to be MUD, which is higher frequency phase cancellation, like high phase cancellation caused by higher frequencies at a rate that's fast enough for us to hear. If that value is precisely the same value as the harmonic beneath it, which it is when it's all perfectly relevant, it feels perfect. It feels warm. All these values that people keep talking about when they describe analog stuff. And that's what they're describing. The complete, like, relevance of all the data. And when you do things like distort stuff, the values will still be multiplied, but again, the result will be a multiple, and it'll sound, that's the difference between a thing that sounds digital or analog, is that particular quality. So I'm telling you all this because you might want to be like, I want to do this, but not pay how much this thing costs. And you can still do that digitally. It just takes a crap ton of CPU. And especially if you're doing really uncomplicated intermodulatory stuff like this. Plugins that do all of this really well, things like Phase Plant, Serum, and that kind of thing, they don't do it this hard. And it's a big reason because they don't, like, it is a huge CPU crunch to actually process it that well, that perfectly. I've set up some pretty high frequency things to do inside Citrus and with a bunch of like wheels and mods and whatever. And to get it clear enough that it was just fine, like a good average okay, meant that if I played more than one note, it would take my CPU. So that's what this thing is useful for. And also why that it can save presets is crazy powerful, because normally you basically just have to like leave the seat of your pants and sample everything you're doing at all times. And that is a workflow life that honestly, it just doesn't feel worthwhile. Unless of course this is like, you just like doing all that, like it's a good time. But that is the step putting this together that makes this something that's like a tool. This is a really competent producer's tool. Seriously. And I'm very impressed by it. And you'll see when I talk about the other Arturia stuff, this is something that's true about all of their things. They really know how to get it into position for you to want to use it, even though it's all hardware. It's not for really for DAW use. Like, it's got USB capabilities. There's a computer-based like MIDI configurator, that kind of thing. But you're gonna get this stuff because you want to live the sort of hardware life. But you want functionality and modern convenience, and boy, do they have it. And it is not hacky, it is not hokey, it is real. Let's do more fun stuff. So we were doing the metalizer, and then the sync, and then we FM'd it, and then we FM'd the filter. Let's undo some stuff. Let's see, preset. Oops, I'll just So like we can here's another smart thing they did. They have this square wave here. And if I just, the pulse width control on most synths, which is what this knob does, is normally it'll be in the middle is regular pulse position, and then there's plus or minus, and then it'll be like all the way up, and then that same way on the other end. But they made the call to say that we need there to be a position that's just the regular square. It just goes in that one direction. It's fine. It's strange that I'm normally on Mr. Options guy, but just having the opposite phase version is not so worthwhile to make it to sacrifice how easy it is just to be like, bleh. Like I'm sure we could snap in the center or something, but modulation wise, that might make complicated things. Because we can still use this to make pretty super solid sounding things. if we, LFO3. So LFO3 and, or Ultra, nope. Yeah, LFO3 and the modulator VCO3 are the same VCO, the same thing, the same source, but they're both key tracked. So like if you wanted it to be tuned modulation, it's also tuning the LFO by default. And here's another just crazy efficient combo that it just does. That's the envelope 3. Whoops, LFO 3. You see how the rate of the effect increases and decreases based on what pitch I'm playing. LFO 3, like there's LFO 1 and 2, which you can do this a thing. Like this knob, this rate knob is something you can assign to one of these doobers and then key track if you want to. Or if you just don't want to mess around with that, LFO 3 is just like that by default. It has divisions ready to go. By default, it's 16th notes. And the keyboard track is also just on by default. And I generally agree with that because this is still just the VCO that is the third oscillator. And if it's going to oscillate that fast, I want it to be tuned, except for some rare circumstances I haven't necessarily tried yet. But on top of that, just ready to go, not having to set up a thing to make, well, because like I said, we can do that with LFO 2 and 3, but now we don't need to. One particular bummer is that it is, I'm pretty sure it's linked to whatever waveform is happening. So as well as it being, it's like, I guess it's a sub oscillator. It's a really low sub oscillator. That's a cool idea. But it's whatever waveform it is. But the problem with it is if you change it, it'll also change this modulator. And because this is analog and FM in analog is real, detuning happens as a result of like the shape of the waveform in particular ways that is difficult to account for. And if I account for it and then change it and now it's out of account again, that's going to be a problem. Now here's an example. So if I just pick an intensity of FM, I can choose to be in tune again. But if I don't want that same intensity, but I want it to be in tune, then what you have to do is you have to detune the thing that's out of tune now. And this is some math about whatever oscillator you're going to get from whatever kind of analog stuff you ever use. If you modulate one oscillator by the other oscillator, the one that's being modulated is the one that's going to get out of tune, and that means that's the one you want to offset. That one got really far off. That was more than a whole semitone. Wow, that thing could go surprisingly quick. Hey, cool, I made asteroid sound effects. So, like, how well that sounded just now, if you thought I did or not, is another example of a sound that would be, I think you could do digitally, but would need to care a lot about aliasing to get it to sound like it did just now. Which is just another benefit of it being the thing that it is. Let's make kind of a Reese thing, why not? So, no more syncing, let's get you out of here, we don't need you set up anymore. All right, so Ultrasaw is another interesting addition to having handy oscillator do handy things. What is happening? Oh, you might have seen this light up all the way like this. I'm not totally sure how, but there is a way where you're able to design your own Lfo curve. It was something that was given in a firmware update for this thing, which was like the hardest thing I had to do for this. And that includes me making some pretty epic mistakes trying to record something and just booting my mic for the whole video. Like, you can USB this thing into a computer and then you can open up the software, but the software is a bit of a nightmare. And not just using it. Like, using it will be fine. It just takes forever to turn on. It doesn't always notice the thing's there. And sometimes you gotta do some weird crap to update the firmware because that's why it doesn't notice it's there. But you need to use it to update the firmware, and it's some issues. Eventually it worked out, and it's fine. But it is the weakest link. Okay. Reese thing. Oh yeah, ultrasaw. So the ultrasaw is a lot like the metalizer. It is a wave shaper, shapey change thing, but it moves a bit. A little bit of phase cancellation there, kind of interesting. And that's just handy for being a lead in a saw that's still nice and phase coherent. And that's something I care a lot about these days. It's one of the big things I'm looking for in doing anything we're doing here. All right, so I'm going to oscillate. Ooh. Actually, I did do this in serial, but now I'm doing this in parallel because I want to bandpass modulate. Oh yay! Okay, so I'm going to modulate this guy by Vco 3. And that's how you get analog FM to talk. You use a square wave because it actually performs the way you expect it to. Yeah, it performs the way you expect it to. I'm gonna go with a saw wave though. Fun. And so this is a bandpass. 24, fine. And then down here, high pass. Oh, yay, because then when I combo together, that'll feel nice. All right, let's do... Oh, yeah, so there's the noise oscillators, and on top of being able to just have it in the mix, you can also use it to modulate. On this side, it modulates the filter of VCF1, and on this side, it modulates VCO1. That's a bit much, though. So that kind of weirdness we're hearing right now is that the oscillators are just a teensy bit out of tune, because they always are. That's because I'm, I guess I'm not modulating it. What if I do 2? I guess I do want you to be a low pass. Now it's doing effects. So here's something fun. This is another, because these knobs are all digital, I can do things like have the post effect be just the dry wet of active here. Yeah, be the dry wet of active here. And what is that the tagline for? It's not a tagline for anything, but it could be. What would that be a tagline for? I'm going to take an envelope, and whenever it plays, it's going to turn it off. So like this is a pretty standard thing to do in digital universes. You have reverb tails, and when the thing plays, you just sidechain it. That's what I mean by whenever I change the shape, it also changes the nature of the FM. I think what I'll do instead is apply LFO 3 to things. Like the... How it gets still that? Derp. It has to be that. Oh, well, if it's a sine wave. Oh, that still works. If it works for a square wave, it technically is still the same pitch peaks as in a sine wave. That's kind of interesting. It's like a slewed version of a square. Let's keyboard track this guy. I want the opposite. Higher notes want less value because it's higher frequency that way. Oh. So that sort of stuff is really what hardware and analog are really just high resolution processes are good for, is really high frequency stuff. It's hard to work with leads when you're doing this kind of work, not in the analog, but in the digital world. In the digital world, not only do you not have so many harmonics to work with, but if you multiply them, you're generating instantaneously higher than Nyquist material. But not so much the case. Ooh, still kind of a lot. Yeah. This, and my biggest sort of, whenever anyone ever asks me about what I want to see changed in something, it's almost always more key tracked stuff. Because the things that make a dope sound to me are things that change over the course of the spectrum, along with a lot of other parameters, also the pitch. And being able to just assign things to keyboard tracking, like literally every one of these can be keyboard tracked. And internally, the things that like I'd want to be audio rate related keyboard tracked are. If I could not have designed, not that I necessarily should be expected to be able to design hardware well, I'm pretty sure I'd make a long list of dumb choices if I were asked to so right now. But I couldn't even imagine a better designed piece of hardware than this, like for this size and price is a bit pricey. That is for damn sure. But I am going to be doing a lot more of this because in conjunction with looking at the rest of the other pieces of cool gear that are in here, I'm going to be using it as parts for things. I don't mean I'm taking this apart. I mean, I'm going to play it in songs, and along with doing more with it itself and saving presets and whatnot, I am also going to get it involved with using those CV outputs and putting them to good use. And by good use, I mean very, very good use. It'll be a lot of fun. Enjoy this weird sideways angle, as that's what my camera feels like doing right now. As I said in the middle of this video, and hopefully later in the beginning of this video, this was brought to you by Zounds. Straight up gave me this to let me do a thing of it. Well, not that in particular. Let's come back. They straight up gave me this to work with. I'm going to give it back. But while I have it, I'm going to do as much cool stuff with it as I can and record it and show it to you guys. And this is just the beginning. There's a very large list of things coming, and if you would like to see some stuff, head on over to the Sounds website and just pick them and show me. Chances are I'll probably be able to add it to the list. Wow, my voice is exploding. I should record it. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day. If I try really hard to not make the voice not break, it sounds like I'm 3 different people right now. It's kind of awesome. Later.